Alright, CNT125, we're just about the end of our switches lab. In the last podcast I just happened to do the bottom switch, so I moved my console cable over to the top switch. What I'll do now is do a show run, hit the space bar, hit that a couple times, and then I'll do a show VLAN. And I want to see all this on the other switch. Now remember, we'll scroll up here till I see my show run command. And I know it's my top right there. Scroll down till I highlight it all. Use the Control-C shortcut, the Control-C copy shortcut. Then open your notepad and, right-click paste or, Control-V paste. That's the best way to work with putty. Do that Control-C shortcut, Control-V paste kind of thing. All right, so I would save this, save as. I think I saved it already, but here's my top switch. I'll save that as top switch config. I'll replace it. So there's my top switch config. So in my little documents folder here, I should have the top switch and bottom switch so far. All right. In my lab, after I have both of those, and make sure you have them, make sure they're in a folder or something on your desktop or someplace that you can submit them to D12 as soon as we're done here. We're going to scroll down, and we need to, once we have all of our config files, we need to clear the config off the switches. We're not just closing out packet tracer and, and we're done. We actually need to clear the config off of our switches. So to do that, we need to use two commands. We need to erase the configuration, but we also need to erase the VLAN database table that's on the switch. Now, we do need to be careful with these. We need to slow down, make sure we're typing correctly. If we type some of these wrong, I can actually delete the entire contents of, the hard drive, so to speak. There's actually a non-volatile RAM on these things that I could clear off the flash memory and clear off the operating system. So I need to slow down and take my time on what I'm doing. So on my switch here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this VLAN database table. And I'm going to use the command delete, and I'm going to say /VLAN.dat. And what I'm saying is I want to delete this VLAN.dat file that happens to be on the flash portion of this switch. Okay? That's what I'm going to do. And I need to slow down and make sure I get that correct. No spaces or any weird syntax in there. And actually, before I do that, let me show you. Let's do directory. I need to do a directory /:. And you'll see in the directory there is a VLAN.dat file that is being used to save the VLAN database. So I'm going to do delete /:VLAN.dat, saying I just want to delete the VLAN.dat file. If I say /:, I end up deleting the operating system, which is this down here, and I don't want to do that. So delete /:VLAN.dat. I'm going to hit the enter key. It's going to say, are you sure? I'm going to hit the enter key again, saying, yes, I just want to delete that, not anything else. It goes, are you absolutely sure? And I'm going to say enter again. Yes, I do. And if I were to do a delete or directory of my flash, directory, not dire, I'll see that VLAN.dat table is gone, but none of the other files have been erased, which is exactly what I want. I don't want to mess with anything else on there. That's the first piece I need to do. And the second thing I need to do is I need to erase the startup config. So I will do an erase start. Erase start is fine. If I hit the tab key, it'll complete it with startup config. And saying, hey, do you want to do that? I'm going to hit the enter key, and it'll do that. So now, if this switch were to reboot, that configuration will be gone. And if I wanted to do that, I could just do a reload right now, hit the enter key, and it's going to reboot. And when it comes around, there'll be nothing to load, so it'll come back up to that switch prompt. I need to do this on my top switch, and once I'm done there, I need to move the console cable over to the bottom switch. I'm going to let this boot a second and show you that the configuration is gone. And I just kind of paused it for a little bit while it was finishing its reboot, so you didn't have to watch it all. It's just about done rebooting. If I hit the enter key a couple times, it says enter initial configuration dialog. I'm going to say no. and I'm back to my switch prompt. So the VLAN database was deleted, and then we erased the configuration file, and on reboot it came up as a blank switch. Now, just to see that process again, I'm going to move my console cable. That was the top switch. I'm going to move it to the bottom switch. Moving the console cable to the bottom switch, hit the enter key a couple times. There's bottom. Enable, we want to do delete /: VLAN.dat, and I'm slowing down. I'm making sure my syntax is right. It is. I'm going to hit the enter key. It's going to say, do you want to delete this VLAN.dat? Yes, I do. Hit the enter key. Are you sure you want to delete VLAN.dat? I want to hit enter. Yes, I do. That has now been deleted, and I'll now do an erase start and hit the enter key. And if I wanted to reload, I could. If not, when I power these down for the day, that configuration will be gone. Alright, so there is my cleanup on my switches. I will also need to move my patch cables back to the college network. So I'm going to do that now. I'll move both workstation patch cables back to the college network. Plug them back into the box labeled like Hack Internet. I'm also going to remove the crossover cable between my two switches. I'll hang that up on the rack at the side of the room, which I'm doing right now actually. On my two workstations, I will go in and adjust my network settings. I can go over here and do network. I'll do settings. I can go in here to network. I'm going to look for my network and sharing center. I will say Ethernet 3, properties, IP4, TCP IP4 properties, and I'm going to select obtain. Obtain IP address automatically, obtain DNS automatically. I will say, okay, close, close, close. Once I do that, it should show connection here, but I will go out and using my command prompt, my switch is rebooting there. I will do an IP config, and I'm going to verify that I'm getting a 172.21 from the college. Looks good. And I should be able to now, if I open my browser, we'll slide this open. I'll open Firefox here. Once I open Firefox, I should be able to go to a place like, that's nice, okay. We'll open my hack here, and I should be able to log in, and I don't want to save that. I'll open up D2L, and I should now be able to go into the Dropbox on D2L, 125, go to my Dropbox, and I should be able to start adding my files in. And you will most likely want to do that while you're here. Add your config files and everything in so you don't lose them. You may even want to, while you're here, open your drive. I'm going to open my Google Drive. You may want to create for yourself, I have a CNT125 folder. You might want to create a 125 folder, and you might want to create a labs folder and save these config files in there too. That way you have a copy as a just in case, because you won't be in the lab room, for another week. So make sure you're getting these into a place like your Google Drive so you can save them. Make sure they're getting into the Dropbox and D2L so you have them. Now, the only thing left to do, we have our two config files. Again, get them to D2L. We cleaned up the switches. Down here is the top config, bottom config. The only thing left are a couple switch VLAN questions, if you will. As we look down through these real quickly, different methods of controlling broadcast domains. Well, as we think back to what we talked about earlier in the week, switches and layer 3 stuff will create broadcast domains, and VLANs will as well. Hence one of the reasons we're doing our VLAN lab. Two methods of VLAN assignment. Well, static and dynamic. We are using static because we are selecting specific ports and assigning them to a VLAN. Dynamic, I would need a server, and I would typically have a MAC address be assigned to a certain VLAN. That'd be something like an IP phone. When an IP phone boots up, that MAC address gets thrown into a phone VLAN kind of thing. 3, we did static VLAN assignment because we took specific ports and put them into a VLAN. 4, how many VLANs we're running. well, I should say, when you had VLANs running on the switch, how many broadcast domains you have? Well, how many VLANs do we have running? Well, we had VLAN 10 and 20, so we at least had 2 broadcast domains for those 2 VLANs. Advantages and disadvantages of VLANs. Think back to what we talked about earlier in the week about what's pro and con about these guys. VLAN tagging, that was that trunk link that we put between the switches. And VLAN tagging is any traffic moving across that trunk link is going to get tagged as what VLAN it belongs to. And that's going to allow, in question 8 here, just like we were doing, we had 2 switches. That switch could be on the top floor and the other switch could be on the bottom floor. And that's going to allow communication between those floors. VLAN 10 traffic on the first floor to communicate with VLAN traffic on the second floor. Or VLAN 10 traffic on this wing to communicate with VLAN traffic over on the other wing of the building. Answer those. Give yourself some complete sentences here. Answer these guys up, put them in a text file, and submit them along with your 2 config files. And you will be good for your switches and VLANs lab.